The world we inhabit is not as free, or certain, or safe as you might think. The things that you believe to be unassailably evident are little more than shadows dancing behind a curtain, a masquerade crafted and dutifully upheld by an organization known as the Foundation. The file you are about to hear contains containment procedures, descriptions, testing logs, historical and in some cases first-hand accounts of the anomalous objects the Foundation serves to secure, contain, and protect. Its contents have been thoroughly scrutinized by the Ethics Committee and approved by the O5 Council for release to trusted associates of the Foundation. This is SCP Unredacted. Before you ask me out, there's one thing you should know. I'm trans. I'm trans, and that's me. That's who I am. Dr. Cat replied a little more breathlessly than she'd hoped. Her back was pressed as far as she could onto the corridor wall. Her gaze was off to a side, but she could still watch her would-be Valentine from the corner of her eyes. A part of her brain screamed that backing herself into a wall was a bad idea, but it kept her steady, and if this conversation turned sour, she had enough self-defense tricks up her sleeve to still make an escape at least. "It's all right," Miranda answered. She had been playing with a lock of her hair as she often did when seemingly nervous, but she dropped it immediately as Dr. Cat began to speak. There was a beat, and then she added, as if by way of an explanation, I don't mind." "Right, thanks," Dr. Cat breathed out. To be honest, she had never figured out what to expect from her workplace. Was the Foundation a conservative place with the conservative values to match its role as the defender of the status quo? Or did its ruthless pragmatism mean it cared not for the oddities of its members, so long as they get the job done, like it promised? Given the secrecy and the compartmentalization, with each research team working on its own anomalous thing that went bump in the night, these might as well both be true. And it was all a matter of which corner of the Foundation you happened to find yourself in. "I'm glad that you feel safe enough to come out to me, and I promise I won't violate that trust." "Thank you." Dr. Cat leaned back to the wall, more casually, more relaxed this time, the cat ear she was having on today brushing against the wall's surface. "That won't be a problem for you, though, what I, have in my pants?" "Nah, well, I'm ace, so usually what people have in their pants doesn't matter to me one way or another anyway." "Well, really? I'm ace, too." "Yeah, I know." "You do?" "I mean, you were color coordinating your outfit to the ACE flag during Asexual Awareness Week last year, so I figured." "You mean you're not exactly out yet?" There was a beat, and then they broke out into a chuckle, to break the awkward silence at first, but soon it morphed into a sound of genuine enjoyment. "I think I've always been a bit withdrawn, quiet about myself," said Dr. Cat, finally. "Guess I figured people would have been weirded out enough already," she said, gesturing at the cat ears. "With me being, a metamorphic entity?" Miranda filled in the sentence. "If it's any help, I don't think anyone at the site minds. They just sent out a memo when you transferred here, and we'd worked with the likes of Dr. Roth or Cain Pathos Crow before, so yeah." "That's good to hear," Dr. Cat grinned. "To be honest, I've always been a bit curious how that happened. The memo didn't say. If you're okay with sharing, that is. That's not too personal a question." To her own surprise, Dr. Cat found herself not minding the question at all. She remembered first hearing about SCP-113 and the Foundation's promise of it as part of the care package for transgender members of staff, the carrot of acceptance they dangled to ensure your loyalty. She remembered the months of counseling, of being briefed about the possible risk and asked if she understood it. She remembered the day she'd finally been brought into contact with that magical piece of red jasper that had looked like carnelian to her eyes. "As far as anyone can tell, I am gender fluid and have my peculiar ideas on what my self-image should be like, so the magic rock just threw up its hands and gave me limited shape-shifting powers. The folks in charge of SCP-113 had never seen something like this before either, so they poked and probed at me for a bit, but in the end, I'm only able to shape-shift into something I could recognize as myself, so the Foundation just let me get back to work and started writing memos explaining catgirls to people." They both laughed at this and went on to discuss the details of their Valentine meetup. Overall, it wasn't a bad afternoon. From Miranda Collington to Site Director James T. Bradwin, SCP-113 Containment Team. The target does not seem to be aware of being monitored. Her statement regarding her anomalous abilities matches the testimony and test results obtained previously. It's not known if she'll confide additional facets later into the bonding process, but this still remains a distinct possibility. Further monitoring is recommended for the moment. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you like what you hear, follow the link in the description to patreon.com/scpunredacted and help support me by becoming a patron for as little as $3 a month. You can get access to production logs, merchandise, recognition, and even a part in a skip. Regardless of tier, all patrons get early access to every single episode. I don't have the talent it takes to write a skip. All I do is read. Original authors make this podcast possible, so credit to the original author. Their links in the description. Show them some love as well. Consider becoming a member of the SCP Wiki, upvote their work, and maybe write a skip of your own. Maybe I'll read it here someday. You never know if you never try. The content of this podcast and content relating to the SCP Foundation, including the SCP Foundation logo, is licensed under Creative Commons Sharealike 3.0, and all concepts originate from scpwiki.com and its authors. This recording, being derived from this content, is hereby also released under Creative Commons Sharealike 3.0.